Madan Ambrika. So I've just welcomed you in my mother tongue. My name is Ryan Omid Agabazorg. This is my first Out and Equal Summit, and I have really been so inspired by some of the sessions I've participated in over the last 3 days. And it's truly our honor to be here with you today. I'm a first-generation Iranian American, and I currently live in Washington, D.C. with my partner. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Simon Court. Simon is the Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion Strategy and Head of Services for North America at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, New Zealand's government agency tasked with growing New Zealand businesses bigger, faster, and stronger. Originally from New Zealand, based in LA now, this is Simon's second Out and Equal Summit. He's an active member of the LGBTQIA+ space through youth mentorship, advocacy, and also as founder of Simon, a platform for sharing new ideas in design thinking and diversity in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Simon, I would love to invite you to expand on what you bring to this conversation today and a little bit more about you.
Hi, Ryan. I'm not sure I can follow that incredible introduction, but thank you very, very much. I guess the key thing about me is, as Ryan said, I am in LA now, but I'm quintessentially a Kiwi or a New Zealander. I've been very privileged over the years to work with hundreds of organizations through NZTE, through advertising, and initially brought up to the US as head of networks and influence. I've managed to also meet and become friends with some of the world's top entrepreneurs and business people. And there's one thing I've learned is that any successful business starts with people. It is always people at its core. So with my current role being in Los Angeles as well, it's, as Ryan said, it's enabled me to really accelerate that and to give me a new perspective on what this looks like. I had an epiphany a few years ago, and I looked back at my final paper at university, and it was a D&I paper, and it was called Plight of the Filipinos, the World's New Slave Race, and this was in 1999. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it's something that is not, diversity, equity, inclusion is not something that I do. It is not my job title. It is who I am.
But really, we're here today to answer a central question. Despite our best intentions, why do diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts often fail? So let's break this down a little further. And in order to do that, we really must ask ourselves, how can we challenge the thinking and assumptions in the DEI space from past decades to redefine our ways of working to effectively solve problems? And how can we approach our work as a design challenge in this fast-changing digital world? At the end of the session, we really want you to have gained a broader understanding of what the design thinking methodology and approach looks like, what it looks like, where it is, where it comes from, what does it mean, and why it matters. We also hope that you get to experience a little bit how design thinking can be applied to these challenges in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Because design thinking is really just at its core a useful way to fall in love with the problem. And lastly, we really want you to leave this session equipped with some ways of trying a new approach to the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations and challenges within your own organization so that they don't feel so big or insurmountable. But we also want to transition a little bit and get back to this idea of design thinking and how it intersects with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we understand that design thinking can mean a lot of different things in different contexts, and it is a relatively new concept. So we want to start off by watching this brief explainer video from the Harvard Business Review on design thinking.
When companies set strategy, they often stumble. Either they collect a lot of backward-looking data, which doesn't tell them what future customers really want, or they make risky bets based on instinct instead of evidence. Design thinking is a strategy-making process that avoids these mistakes by applying tools from the world of design and shifting the focus to human behavior. Popularized by David M. Kelly and Tim Brown of IDEO and Roger Martin of the Rotman School, design thinking has 3 major stages. First, invent a future. Form a few theories about what customers might want but don't have by immersing yourself in their lives. Instead of polling them about specific products or services, observe and ask questions about their behavior. Next, test your ideas out. Use iterative prototyping with good enough products or services and conduct a few quick experiments to see how consumers respond. Adjust the product, the pricing, or the positioning accordingly. Finally, bring the new product or service to life. When you've got a winner, identify the activities, capabilities, and resources your company will need to actually produce, distribute, and sell it. For example, when senior managers at Procter & Gamble wanted to turn around the skincare brand Oil of Olay, they began by observing shoppers in both mass retail channels and high-end department stores. They realized that their industry had been primarily targeting women over 50 who were worried about wrinkles, while pretty much ignoring those in their 30s and 40s who were concerned about other issues. This was a huge market to be captured. So P&G experimented with new formulations that would tackle multiple skincare goals, then tested different prototypes, price points, and store displays. Finally, the company launched a series of new premium, yet broadly distributed products that were well received by a wide range of consumers. By using imaginative, human-centered problem-solving, design thinking can help you unlock new markets and identify new strategies.
So, as we saw in this video, design thinking can offer us an effective set of tools to grapple with speedy change and complex problems. But the signature trait of design thinking is really establishing a systemic and growth mindset, being problem-oriented and seeking out-of-the-box solutions and innovative breakthroughs. So in other words, design thinking is a different premise. It's a way of falling in love with the problem, like I said before. And it's really rooted in our observation of the needs and empathizing with that of the end user. So, we're here today because we want to talk about design thinking, and we want to provide an opportunity and create some space to use this approach to solve some of our most pressing diversity, equity, and inclusion challenges. I'd like to invite Simon now to share with us a bit more about where he sees the intersection between design thinking and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, to kick off this conversation, Simon, can you tell us a little bit more about what design thinking means to you, and how does it tie into, let's say, an overall business strategy?
Yeah, I love that. And it's, so for me, we just heard then how design thinking works in the product world. So you heard how an IDEO or Stanford D School, or even organizations like Chobani and Lululemon go through a design thinking process to find out a product market fit. It is slightly different, or I look at it slightly different for the diversity, equity, inclusion world, although the framework is similar. So what you'll see there is a series of stages: so empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and evolve. And what you need to understand though is, while it is a framework and a way of thinking, it is iterative, and you move forwards and backwards multiple times. You'll hear in some of the case studies today that we went backwards and forwards to solve one problem multiple times. The idea of this though is that the empathize stage, especially in diversity, equity, inclusion, is the most important part. So what that is how do we truly understand our organization? What are they going through? What are their experiences? And how do we go about finding that? What is the qualitative and the quantitative data that we can gather to tell the right story? Because only then can we define the challenge. Because if we don't do that, we are building a program, to me, which is based on our own gut and our own intuition and our own life experiences. So we have, there's a model, so if you go to the next slide, Ryan, called DVF. And if you, like I said, go to any of the big design thinking schools, I've recently studied at MIT for design thinking there in one of their programs, and they talk about the DVF model all the time. And what this is it stands for desirability, viability, and feasibility. So in a product sense, so you heard with the previous video, is it desirable? Does the customer want it? Are they going to buy it? Is there a market for it? The F stands for feasibility. So can the company achieve it? Do they have the right team? Do they have the right resources? Do they have the right budget? Do they have the right distribution? All that good stuff. And is it viable? And that simply is it going to make money? So when you have a framework like that for a product and they're all in balance, you can quickly figure out the product's going to make money. I think it's slightly different for diversity, equity, inclusion. So I played with the model a little bit. So if we can jump to the next slide. so I look at it, so I've added what I call P at the top. I call it a P DVF model. And I think we start with purpose. And for any model to work, we truly need to understand what our purpose is. Why are we doing this work? And it is beyond because it's the right thing to do, quote unquote, because yes, that is true, but it is also business strategy. It is also business success. If we start with the purpose, that creates a lens that we can look through, which ensures that everything else we do works. Then the DVF model still works. Is it desirable? Does the models or the frameworks or the incremental changes, whatever they happen to be, are they desirable? Does the company want it? Does the employee want it? Does the leadership want it? Does the board want it? Does the consumer want it? Does the supplier want it? And that will depend on the problem you're trying to solve. So if it's a diverse talent pipeline problem, that will be different to building an entire diversity, equity, inclusion program. Is it feasible? This one for me is really important. So is it resourced? Do they have the right team? Where's the company placed it? So does it sit within a function of human resources? Is it a part-time job for someone in human resources? Or does it report to the CEO? Because that will tell you the importance of it for me within the organization. And is it viable? Is it going to have impact? Is it going to make changes? And can we measure those changes, and how through lagging and leading KPIs and all that good richness? But then I think there's another layer as well. So on the next slide, you need to pop over, Ryan, as I call it, and I've seen other organizations talk about this, as intergenerational impact. And the other organizations I've seen, they've placed it down with the DVF, but for me, it is this all-encompassing lens. So for the first time in our history, we have more generations in the workplace than we've ever had. We have from 17, 18-year-olds up to 85, 90-year-olds. And I always say that you can't be an ally for one group and not an ally for another group. If you're an ally for one group, you're an ally for all groups. And that's the same as the diversity, equity, inclusion program. So by using this framework, which is essentially a simple design thinking framework, you follow the process in the DVF model with purpose and a lens, then we ensure that whatever we're doing is applicable to everyone within the organization. We're not leaving anybody out. But it's also ensuring that we are building for the next generations coming through.